Pokemon Company has a plan, and the plan is probably pretty big. Recently, they just announced the closure of Pokemon Bank. Eventually, this day was going to be coming, but the more important thing is when exactly this is going to be shutting down. You'll realize that Pokemon Bank is going to be shutting down February 25th of 2027. Now that's just 2 days before Pokemon Day, and it makes you realize maybe the Pokemon Company is trying to soften the blow with announcing something spectacular. Up to this point, you were able to transfer your Pokemon through every single generation. It didn't matter what you played on. If you played on the GBA, you can transfer a Pokemon from that specific game all the way to Pokemon Bank and then through Pokemon Home through various different methods. But now, when you get rid of the ability to transfer your Pokemon, there's definitely going to be a lot of problems that occur. Now personally, I don't really use Pokemon Home. It doesn't really affect me. I think that just having the Pokemon inside the game and calling it a day is definitely really cool. But if you're a collector, this might serve as a really interesting warning to the what's next for Pokemon. Now, if we were going to take a look at it, you'll realize that they've been slowly bringing out their older games. This is definitely a really important thing. You'll also realize that we have Generation 1 on Nintendo Switch and Switch 2. Generation 3 is reportedly coming on Nintendo Switch 1 and 2 later on this year, but where in the world is Gen 2? Gen 2 is definitely a really interesting story. It seems like they're not going to be releasing the Game Boy games since they could have easily done Red and Blue, but they wanted to do the more definitive experience. Quite literally is what they've said. So, the definitive experience of Pokemon Generation 2 would of course be Heart Gold and Soul Silver. This is potentially what they could be planning on releasing. This year could be the year of Game Boy Advance games. Next year could be the year of DS Pokemon games. The year after that could be 3DS Pokemon games. The point is, we'll most likely have every single Pokemon game playable on one device once again. Because if you get rid of Pokemon Bank, then you lose access to hundreds of different Pokemon. They'll be lost to time, stuck in one place. You're not going to be able to transfer your Pokemon. You're not going to be able to take your friend that you brought through every single game, so I guess you better do it now. And honestly, I find this to be a very disappointing factor. Because if I wanted to bring my Pikachu that I caught back in 1995 all the way to Pokemon Home, well then I should be able to carry that legacy forever. Potentially, the Pokemon Company is going to innovate something. There's been a lot of fan theories about what they could be doing to improve on this matter. So, potentially, what they're going to do is have a cartridge slot that you put the cartridge inside, it picks up the Nintendo Switch, and then all of a sudden, boom, you can transfer your Pokemon freely from that, so then you can have fun with your Pokemon once again. That definitely could work in that way, or they might innovate this thing that you're able to play those games that your physical cartridge or whatever that you put in and play it on the Nintendo Switch too. If they really want to do that, they probably would have done it by now, but this is definitely a really interesting idea. Now, the plan goes even further than we really expected. Since Pokemon Bank is going to be shutting down 2 days before Pokemon Day, what exactly could this mean for Pokemon Day? What could we be seeing in the upcoming Pokemon Presents? Well, honestly, it's definitely really interesting because we know that we are going to be getting Pokemon Winds and Waves gameplay revealed, information, whatever the case may be on that game, and most likely mobile games as well, and something to do with TCG. But that still leaves the gates wide open for something else. If you looked what happened earlier this year, you'll realize that they announced sort of Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green 1 week before the Presents. But then also inside the Presents, they did talk about it. So potentially they're going to be doing the exact same thing with Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Now you might be asking, how in the world are they going to be doing the double screen? Do we even need the double screen? Is this going to be something that they've been working on and they're going to be re-releasing next year or whatever? Potentially. Well, if you looked at it, the dual screen can work in many different ways. If you've seen the Nintendo Switch and Switch 2, you could take half the screen as the top screen on the DS and the other half as the bottom screen of the DS, and that could work just fine. Technically, you could use your mobile device or a second Nintendo Switch or Switch 2 system. They could even do as far as a Wii U gamepad that would allow you to play your games in that sort of way. Because not gonna lie, the Wii U gamepad is one of the most comfortable controllers that I've ever held. I know, you might say that is definitely weird, but for me, it is so comfortable. Having that screen on the bottom is honestly so flexible to how you play the game, it's quite crazy. Because if you wanted to, instead of opening up the map every 2 seconds, you can look down, alright, I got the map, I got my whatever Pokemon, I got Zelda, whoever. You can just look down, look up, look down instead of pausing, going through the menu, and it's just seamless. So having something like that would be fantastic. You could probably assume that if they do something like that, it's going to cost a pretty penny, but let's just not go that far. Let's say that's going to cost $30 for the Wii U gamepad. Definitely really cool. Maybe with an OLED screen, hey, that'd be awesome. Then, not just Pokemon could be brought to the system, but like Zeldas and Marios and 3DS games that were lost to time. Another way that they can do this is just by doing what they did to PDSP. Taking the whole game, remastering it, giving it some sort of art style, keeping the most of the glitches that were in that game, and calling it a day. Because before you say, they don't usually do 2 Pokemon games in 1 year, 2 brand new ones at least. Well, if you were to take a look at Pokemon Legends Arceus and also BDSP, I believe, released at the same time, or it was Legends Arceus and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That's right, that's the year. So potentially something like this is going to be happening. Overall, I find it all really interesting. Or this could be just a dream that Pokemon is finally going to be giving us exactly what we want. I mean, we never thought the day that we are going to be getting Pokemon Emerald, and here we are. It still hasn't been confirmed, however, but this is a really reliable leaker. When I say really reliable, he's the one that leaked the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and the Nintendo Switch 2. So I'm having my hopes up. I'm fully believing him that this is going to be happening. Christmas season definitely would make a lot of sense here. But overall, I think that there definitely is a lot more planned for Pokemon games, because you can't just shut down one of the main sort of transporters of Pokemon games to have them all stuck on the Game Boy and calling it a day without giving us something back, especially your players that like older games over the newer games. Because I'll agree, some of the newer games kind of suck, but some of them are actually really good. It kind of depends on how you look at it. But overall, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that they're giving us something? Are they going to take it away and not give us something in return? I definitely find this all to be really interesting. So far, the 30th anniversary of Pokemon has been, well, 50-50. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments section down below, and thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.